Hey, yeah, no, you think that's funny? There's the. Now I'd like to give this to you for your son, but I had too much fun with it already. Welcome to the continuing winemaker series here at the Wine Month Club. Boy, what an honor and a pleasure to have Bartholomew Broadbent here from Broadbent Selections, and not only that, a huge family history in the wine industry. So it's welcome to the stage and having some fun. We're going to taste through some wines together, talk about what's going on in your side of the, I can't say pond because you live in Virginia.
Yeah, I'm American.
And you're American.
Despite my Alabama accent.
Yes,
yeah.
You're from the South. I was going to say the South for sure, right?
Yeah.
So we tasted through a lot of wines together, and all of them great. And we got to meet for the first time the other night at a tasting in downtown Los Angeles. So it's great having you here. So
thank you.
One of the questions I had for you was, were you related to Michael Broadbent and his son, and his history in the wine businesses?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a book around here somewhere.
Yeah, and I have my ancestry DNA thing done, and it does look like
true.
I am his son.
It's part of that, huh?
Although the annoying thing is, it told me I'm only 5% English, which is very annoying.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
No, seriously, did you do that?
Seriously. Yeah.
And what was the other?
64% Western European, 20% Irish, Scottish. A little bit of good rape and pillage Viking.
Oh, good. That's great.
And a little bit of Iberian, which suits my wine business.
Maybe open a Viking restaurant somewhere.
Yeah,
That'd be really good, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about the business and how long you've been doing this, and your father didn't want you to get into this.
No, not initially. He was very concerned that I'd just not work very hard and just take it easy and have an easy life.
Oh, good. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. So eventually, I made my mind up when I was in Australia picking grapes and working in wineries in Australia, and wrote back saying, "Hey, I want to get in the wine business." And then he was very enthusiastic. But my sister was briefly in the wine business, but now she's actually the head magistrate judge of England and Wales.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
See, my sister's just the Superior Court judge in California.
Oh,
so
really? Wow.
maybe they ought to get together.
They
so,
should, yeah.
So, why did you go to Australia to pick grapes? I mean, that's.
That was so. After leaving school, I went to be a tour guide at Hennessy in Cognac. Then I worked for Harrods Wine Department in London, and then it was a gap year. The English do this thing where they travel between high school and university, and I went to pick grapes for Rothbury and then the Yalumba. And when I was there, I just decided I'm not going back to university. I skipped it all and just got.
Let's go to work.
Yeah.
And let's pick grapes. Why not? Right. That's the first thing we do.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to work in a winery once.
Yes. And so then, after you picked grapes for the thing, and you told your father you wanted to be in this industry, and then you had your head examined, and then.
Yes. Yeah, that was the year of the Princess Diana got married to Prince Charles.
Really? Wow.
And I was in Australia. My father said, "Well, you should come back now because there's a job in London you could get." And so I went to work for Harvey's in Pall Mall. And then I met this customer who came in after a boozy club lunch, and we had the directors of LA breweries downstairs in the meeting, so I had to keep this guy quiet. So I gave him a glass of sherry and shoved him in a closet. And every 20 minutes I opened the door and filled up his glass. And after 5 glasses, he said, "They'd like you in North America," and got me a job in Canada. So I went there, Montreal for a year, Toronto for 4 years, then met the Symington family who moved me to San Francisco to start a wine company for them called Premium Port Wines. I did that for 10 years, didn't marry their daughter, reached a glass ceiling.
Oh, well, that's what happens.
So I was there, San Francisco.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, San Francisco for 21 years. And then I met a girl. I thought she said Virgin. It turned out to be Virginia. And so now I live in Virginia for the past 10 years.
It's a classic mistake.
Yeah.
Well, so then the Broadbent, when they told me that we were going to have dinner together and the tasting, the first thing I thought of was Madeira and port. So when did that happen?
So because I spent 10 years specialized in port and reintroduced Madeira in 1988 after it had been gone since Prohibition, but then we
had it really?
Yeah.
In America?
Yeah, it was the biggest selling wine in America until Prohibition. And then it just disappeared. And then in 1988, we relaunched it in America. And so for 10 years, I was specialized in port and Madeira. And then when I started Broadbent Selections in 1996, one of my suppliers from a time I was in Canada said, "Well, you can now represent whatever you want. You don't have to just do port and Madeira." And I said,
Yeah.
"Okay."
Wow.
So now our portfolio, we represent probably certainly the top wine from Lebanon, Chateau Musar.
Oh yeah, right, for
One of-
sure.
one of the best.
Very famous.
One of the best New Zealand wines, Spy Valley. The two top wineries from Portugal, Casa Ferreirinha
Yes.
and Quinta de Crasso.
Taste those.
And we have the biggest selection from South Africa, where we have all the sort of top gems.
Which
from
I
South Africa.
found fascinating. Actually, there's a couple here that we were going to taste through again.
Yeah,
And we were talking at the tasting on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday?
Tuesday.
I tasted the Virginia Cabernet Franc.
Yeah,
Now that's fascinating
Fantastic.
because I featured the Jefferson Cuvée Chardonnay, and I can't Prince. The winery called Prince something. Anyway, great Chardonnay at the time,
Yeah.
and most of the East Coast wines back then, maybe it's changed a little bit. Now were white or fruit based,
Yeah.
and now we have Cabernet Franc, which I thought was fascinating.
well, Barbersville is the winery I represent, but there are now 300 wineries in Virginia.
Wow, that's
I
amazing.
put it on terms of quality. I put it up there with Oregon, Washington, and California.
Yeah, well, I thought the
And-
quality was very high.
Yeah, and so they have a lot of different varieties that grow well in Virginia.
So there must be a 1,000 Jefferson Cuvées over there, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
got one.
Yeah, I mean Thomas Jefferson was the first winemaker in America, but his vines kept dying because they didn't know about phylloxera back then, and so they figured that out. So the only problem with Virginia is the humidity, but they can counter
Figured that out.
Yeah. figure that
So
out.
I had a Burgundy maker here, Anne Perron from Pomar,
Yeah.
and she said that now she's a 12th generation winemaker there in Pomar. So she said that Thomas Jefferson came and took cuttings back
Yeah.
with her great 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 grandfather, something like that, and probably one of the ones that died. I don't know,
Yeah.
but they had this family history and this relationship
Yeah.
with the Jeffersons. I thought that was fascinating.
But the other really interesting thing we haven't touched on in improving wines around the world is that the only wine region where we represent wineries, the only wine region in the world where they are not complaining about global warming is England, because we now have a spectacular climate for wine, and we're making probably the top.
Well, so
sparkling
when it
wines.
was too cool and foggy, now it's perfect.
It's perfect. We represent a winery called Gusbourne, and it's a sparkling wine from England, and it's beating Grand Marque champagnes and tastings. So that even the French are now, the Tétinger and Pommery have both bought in England. They're all.
Now, is that in what part of England?
So it's in Kent, Sussex, and Hampshire. Those are the three main.
So my dad was telling me a story recently, and I think it was about James Suckling, but maybe not. But he was on a plane back from England, had brought home some English wine, and was talking to this gentleman next to him on the plane, and it happened to be, I think it was James Suckling. And the guy says, well, English wines are terrible. This is probably like 80-something.
Yeah, they were
Right.
back then.
And so my dad goes, no, they're not all that bad. He goes, I have one on the overhead. Let's open it. So they sat in the plane and they opened this English wine. And he said, oh, yeah, it's not too bad,
too bad.
palatable.
Yeah.
So did you bring any to America, or do you have them on your
Oh,
list now?
yeah, we represented in America, yes.
Wow.
And it is fantastic.
Well,
And
you can tell Epic they've never brought it here.
Well, it's the easiest launch of a product we've ever done, and it's 98% in restaurants,
Really?
which is a really positive thing. And people go to these restaurants and they say, where can we buy it? And there aren't many retailers who actually have it. So good opportunity for you.
So it would be.
It
'cause
is expensive, though. It's
Well,
very
we'll
expensive.
find a way to do something with it. But I'm just trying to figure out, what the general public would think if I brought to them English wines. And I think no one would have an opinion, right? They wouldn't know. The general public would not know that wines from England weren't that great before. They'd probably wonder, like, why I haven't tasted them before.
Well, the good thing is with they receive it. They're not going to. They're going to drink it.
Right,
And when
yeah,
they
just-
drink it, they're going to say, "Wow, Paul's a fantastic visionary. He's found something
way ahead of the curve. Are you kidding?
Something better than champagne."
And how about the technologies in England? Have they changed, improved with time? And
Yeah, I mean, I saw something which I've never seen in any other vineyard in the world, which is a machine in the vineyard which sucks out the sort of fog.
Really?
In California, I've seen fans.
Yeah,
and,
right.
In
they
some
have
places, they
those
send
boiler things, those heating things.
helicopters, but
Yeah.
they've got this machine. I'd never seen it before.
Wow,
technology
interesting.
is there.
So you're speaking about your dad, and we were talking about Hubline.
Oh, yeah.
So here's my dad's paddle from an auction, and you can
That
see
is so funny.
he wrote down the lot numbers that he was going to bid on
Yeah.
at the time. has to be 70 something.
Yeah, so so my father, Michael Broadbent, started the wine auctions in Christie's in 1966.
Oh wow.
Then he started doing auctions in America in the 60s and 70s. Then he started the Napa Valley wine auction with Bob
wow.
Darby.
Yeah. Wow.
And he wrote 433 consecutive months for Decanter magazine. And he's written a bunch of books about wine.
I bet I have. My dad collects everything. I probably have 410 of those articles.
Absolutely. And your father would have known my father if
Yeah,
he
I
went to
think
those
he
tastings.
Yeah, see, this is.
Yeah. That's
kept
very
us-
cool.
Well,
That's,
he's my dad's a pack rat, and I've taken on that trait from him.
Right.
Talking about DNA, that's and my wife hates it.
Yeah.
So these actually, oddly, these wines I did not save from the day, but we were in our neighborhood here in Arcadia, walking on the street, open house, walk into the house. It's staged by a furniture company.
Yeah.
Go into the basement. There's a little cellar, underground but not cooled. And I pull a bottle out, and I just randomly, there's like 200 bottles there, and it's here. This is Minervois, okay? It's Chateau Gargazeau Minervois, and I'm like, why would this guy in Arcadia, 2 blocks from my house, have a Chateau Gargazeau? I think I bought it for myself.
Yeah.
So I turn it over, and there's our sticker.
the wine and malt top.
Yeah. So
That's
all the
brilliant.
wines on his rack were from us.
That is
And so I
unbelievable.
bought it from him with this great collection of things going back, and including the fact that I had Robert Mondavi Jr. in here,
Yeah.
and he sees this. He's like, "You did business with my grandfather?" Because this is a 72 Zin.
72, wow.
You know? Isn't that
Wow.
great?
Yes,
He was
fantastic.
freaking out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I was selling to your father in the 80s. I was.
It would have been.
Yeah.
It would have been.
80s,
He sold
maybe
like
90s.
not till.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly when he sold, but you know what's interesting, and we'll get to tasting here. But when he sold the store, his last store was the liquor store. He sold it to a Korean family. But this is Palos Verdes Estates. You know, this is a fairly affluent neighborhood in Southern California, protected by the peninsula, and they turned it back to a liquor store. Now, my dad had it for 15 years,
Yeah.
and preeminent wine shop in L.A. 2 years, it was out of business
Ah, what a shame.
because it went back to liquor store, ice and booze, ice cream, and the whole concept was lost. So
Terrible.
there was room for it. Anyway, let's get to
Yeah.
tasting. This is your Spy Valley,
Spy Valley.
which is an interesting concept.
Yeah, so Spy Valley is a winery in the Waihopo Valley of Marlborough, and it's called Spy Valley because you can see from the winery 2 enormous white structures that look like massive golf balls, and they are actually American satellite listening centers, and they monitor the cell phones from around the world from this spy base.
That's craziness.
And this was the first vineyard in that valley. Was planted in 1995, and it's called E Block, and it's owned by Spy Valley. And this is the first year they've ever released it as a single block. Usually it goes into the Spy Valley, one of the Spy Valley blends. But
I found it fascinating. I found it very good. Normally we get way too much, people use cat pee, I think it's kind of a weird name, but way too much grapefruit, way too much herbs, and this has got way better balance, and actually the mid palate carries, some nice other fruit character to it, so
Yeah.
really good wine.
I think it's my father who coined the word cat pee.
Did he really?
I think so.
Well, I'm honored to use it then at that point.
So don't piss on it.
Fascinating. We get so many of these things, and sometimes it's just like, wow, you can't even.
That's really fun, isn't it?
You can't drink it. But this one intrigued me. South African Chardonnay.
Yes.
South African, right?
Yep, it's made by De Wetsoff Winery, spelt with a W but pronounced with a V, De Wetsoff, the De Wet family, and they were the first people to plant Chardonnay in South Africa in 1985. They got the cuttings from their friend Joseph Drouin from his vineyard,
Wow.
Claude Mouche, which is planted on limestone. Their winery in Robertson is on limestone, so these are Burgundian vines in South Africa, and to me it's a very Burgundian style
Yes, for sure.
of Chardonnay, and I love this wine. I've been a ABC person for a long time, anything but Chardonnay, but
Yeah.
when I tasted these wines it got me back to loving Chardonnay.
Well, my first comment was it's very terroir driven, and now that you're talking about them being Burgundian, absolutely, and
Yeah.
and that's one thing about Burgundy, right? It's
Yeah.
the terroir that drives the character of the wines, and Chardonnay and Pinot Noir do well with that.
Yeah.
And I just found that just jumped out of the glass.
Yes,
with
absolutely.
that limestone.
This one's called Tversov Bonvallon. It's one of our vineyards, and they make various different wines. There's a limestone hill, which is their basic level, and then this is a jump up in price, but it's not a huge jump. But I think it's well worth the extra few dollars to have this.
I think you're right. I think this is wine you pour for the other ABC people,
Yep.
and they'll
will love it.
They'll turn their heads a little bit. They're like, this is
Yeah,
interesting.
this is-
What is this, Chardonnay? Oh, I don't like Chardonnay. I like this. This is another South African, right? And this
Yes.
is a rosé. Now, South African wines up until a few years ago, around here anyway, were just inhibited by that creosote character that was so prevalent.
Yes.
And I've not seen that.
Most of them have overcome that now. There are still a few remnants of it. But so what happened was after apartheid, all the wineries started shipping again, and they were being made by young winemakers in Stellenbosch and things like that. And these young winemakers, reaching their 30s and 40s, wanted to have their own wineries, and they found they couldn't afford anything in Stellenbosch or Paarl or places like that.
Right.
So they went searching, and Adi Badenhorst, who makes this, Adi, an amazing character, and he found the Swartland area. The Swartland pre-apartheid used to make all the South African style ports and sherries and things, and then when apartheid came along, they lost their export markets. Wineries went out of business. Vineyards got abandoned. So Adi found these vineyards, and it's a big area, and there are hundreds of amazing old vineyards dating
Really?
back to the 1860s. Some vines are 1865.
Wow, that's amazing.
And they're bush vines, sand soil, so there's no phylloxera. And he went to these farmers and said, "Hey, listen, you're just either not picking your grapes or selling them to cooperatives. I'll buy your grapes if you let me manage the farm, and don't pull them up because we like old vines, and let me sell them."
Wow. So are they still bush vines?
Yeah, they're still bush vines, still old.
Wow.
Initially, this is Cinsault, Rosé Cinsault grape, and initially he was buying a ton of grapes for $125. When you think that a ton of grapes in Napa on average is $9,000.
Yeah, what did I pay? I was paying from Mendocino not too long ago at Merlot. I paid, I don't know, a few $1,000, I think.
Yeah, and the most expensive grapes in Napa are over 20 grand. But he was back then getting $125 for a ton of grapes, and the wines are old vine, naturally produced. Most of them haven't even had tractors on them. They're just sort of, pristine land.
He was probably happy to get the $125.
Yeah, the farmer wasn't. He wasn't
You
getting
can
anything
believe it.
before that, and of course prices have gone up a little bit since then.
This should be very inexpensive then. Oh,
Well,
just
it is.
teasing.
It is.
You know what I like about this one?
Relative to the quality, it's very-
got great weight for a rosé. It's not
Yeah.
this blown out, too crisp.
Mhm.
I wonder how the French would
Sorry about
receive
the torn label. It was in a
That
box.
means it was well used and
Yeah, it was
well experienced.
pouring it. At the,
Yeah, how many tastings did you do when you were here?
well, I've been here a week. I've just been working solidly all day,
Pouring.
every day. But
Right,
so this
so
is
this
a
is a Shiraz,
same thing. Secateurs. It's not cicadas. It's secateurs. Cicadas are what you have in trees.
Cicadas,
Secateurs
yeah,
are the
secateur.
grape snippers. If you look at his bottles, you'll find this amusing. There's a little
I noticed that.
little dog, wild
Yeah.
dog there. It's because it's the halfway mark of the bottle. So when his great friends like Eben Sadi, one of the other great winemakers, they come around to the winery, they see him, they'll open the bottle and drink it halfway, then the other one will finish it, and then they'll open a bottle and pour it.
Okay,
another
that's
bottle.
funny.
So they get one bottle down them just to sort
Then
of
they start.
loosen
Then they
things
start
up. Yeah.
tasting it.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to just point this out to the people watching. When you bottle a wine or you label a wine, you can tell the bottling line where this label should start. So many centimeters from the bottom, or however you want to do it from the top. And so what he's saying is that this little doggy here, you have to position this label in the right place, right?
Yeah,
in order to
it's
do
exactly
that.
halfway.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So this has changed actually, even though it's been open for a while. It's got much more blueberry in the nose than it did when I opened it, tasted it earlier.
Yeah, and this one's 56% Shiraz, 22% Cinsault, 21% Grenache, 1% Tinta Barroca.
Which Tinta Barroca?
It's a Portuguese variety, and when you sell wine to America, if you put grape varieties on the labels, you have to put percentages.
You have to put the percentages.
So he makes it up. He has no clue what's in there, but he makes it up. Sometimes it adds up to 101%,
Oh, oops.
or 98%. But
What does the TTV know about stuff like that, right?
but this is 13% alcohol. That's very important to me. I like low alcohol wines. I drink wine. I need a lot of wine to get liquid in me, and so alcohol is really important. And something that a lot of your viewers wouldn't know is the difference between, let's say there's 12.5% alcohol wine. If I drank that and you took something that's 15% alcohol and drank that, I drank a whole bottle of this, you drank a whole bottle of 15%. The difference in intake of alcohol is about 3 vodka tonics. So would you drink a bottle of wine, then ask your mates for 3 vodka tonics? They'd
right.
think you're nuts, but that's what you do when you
That's
drink
what
15
happens.
alcohol.
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
Or put it this way, 2 4-ounce glasses at 14.5% alcohol, you're over the drink drive limit. 2 4-ounce glasses at 12%, you're under the drink drive limit. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah. So,
Huh, I didn't know that. No, I've never taken the volume, and though I have a lot of people that take my samples and distill them.
right.
And so if you start with 750 milliliters and it's 12% alcohol, you end up
Yeah.
with whatever the
Yeah.
milliliters. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
And also the funny thing about back labels, and they think it's very funny that you have to put warnings saying if you drink too much you can get pregnant and stuff
Yeah.
like that. In South Africa, it says if you drink too much and walk on a road, you might get hit by a car.
Really? That's hilarious.
That's their back label in South Africa.
Quite different than the Bézier poster, right?
Yeah,
You
very-
drink 2 liters,
2
whenever,
liters, yeah.
whenever you want. So, and then now we were talking about this earlier. At your tasting on Tuesday, there were a few Portuguese still wines, and they seem to be very popular
Yeah.
these days. And there's even end caps like at Whole Foods for Portuguese wines, and they're relatively new to the country, though they've probably been here for many, many years. But as far as popularity is concerned, they seem to be getting more popular.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing is Vino Verde. I make a Broadbent Vino Verde. But still red wines and white wines are coming very popular in America. I think what's helping them is that today's sommelier is a bit of a wine geek and doesn't want to be selling Cabernet and Merlot and Chardonnay like has been done by our parents and grandparents.
Yeah.
They want to find something new and fun and completely intellectually stimulating, and something that people say, "What's that?" and actually want to drink it instead of saying, "What's that?" and don't want to drink it.
yeah, I've had this already. So this.
Yeah.
There's something about the port grapes that were used for port, and there's a reason why they were used for port originally too. So they are very dense. They carry great complexity and can feel old and tired tasting if they're not
Yeah.
vinted properly. But this is very bright and sort of almost new age-ish, new worldish when I get the character in it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that port got invented is because the French were fighting the English, and the English had to stop buying Bordeaux, and the English found that the best wine in the world outside of Bordeaux was in the Douro Valley, and so they stripped those back. The primitive winemaking and shipping methods were, the wine didn't survive a long sea journey, so they added brandy to fortify it for the trip.
Yeah.
But the original wines would have been like this. It would have been just great, beautiful wines, which anyone who likes Bordeaux or Cabernet is going to like that.
We're getting quite a range of prices too. Now, we didn't bring it up here, but we tasted the more expensive version, which I thought was very complex. And the point that the consumer should learn is that these are world-class wines.
Yes.
They can compete at any level with complexity and character and quality of manufacturing.
This winery is called Casa Ferreirinha, and they make the most iconic wine from Portugal, which is called Barca Velha. And Barca Velha sells for $650 a bottle.
Wow, that's amazing. Almost
so-
Petrus-like,
yeah,
huh?
Yeah, and then they also sell a more reasonable price than this, even called Esteva, and the Steva is about $11, $10 a bottle.
You know, the empty glass nose is quite telling of its complexity and fruit character.
Yeah, it's spectacularly good. Yeah, this is the sort of wine I drink at home every day.
Well, Bartholomew, it's a great pleasure having you here, and I'm so happy you were able to stop by on your way back to
Been fun.
Virginia, right?
Yes, thank you.
I
Yeah,
hope you come
yeah.
out and see us again sometime, or
I
we
will.
just have dinner or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.